I want to talk for just a moment about the phrase the scholarly consensus, or the majority of biblical scholars say, or this is the agreed upon view within the field of biblical studies, or phrases like those. Because they're phrases that I hear a lot of people, myself included, use on this platform. It's a phrase that's generally used by those who engage in higher critical scholarship, of which I consider myself a part of that group. Quite a bit of work that I've done and am preparing to do is in that level of the critical scholarship of the Bible. And those phrases are used by those of us who engage in critical scholarship to say that the viewpoint that we have, or the thing that we're about to say, is what is agreed upon by most scholars. And what that does is it allows us to say, this isn't just me creating this out of thin air, but there are many people who have degrees in this area and spend a lot of time studying this area and are very well known within the field that agree with whatever it is that we're asserting. The problem is that sometimes those of us who use the phrase, and I myself included have probably done this before, we can sometimes use the phrase that this is the consensus among scholars to look down upon someone or to discredit the argument of someone who doesn't agree with whatever the scholarly consensus is. And I just want to say that we need to be careful not to do so, because while something may be the scholarly consensus today, we know that the scholarly consensus on many things has changed over time as we study things more, as we discover new things, as somebody proposes a new argument, the scholarly consensus can change or shift. It's also important to know that when it's the consensus on something, that doesn't mean that every scholar agrees with what the consensus is. With just about any view, there's at least a couple of scholars who are well-known, good, critical scholars who disagree with the scholarly consensus. So you think about something like the argument for the construction of the Gospels, Mark and priority, and Q and M material and L material. That's the scholarly consensus, but there are scholars who disagree with different points of that. Mark Goodacre, one of the best scholars in the Gospels and early Christianity, doesn't believe in Q. He doesn't agree with the scholarly consensus. Same thing could be said about things about the Old Testament. The documentary hypothesis of the construction of the Pentateuch is the scholarly consensus. But not every reputable Old Testament scholar agrees with that viewpoint of the construction of the Pentateuch. And so we just need to realize that just because the majority of scholars agree about something does not mean that every reputable scholar agrees with it. And all of us who engage in higher critical scholarship, there's at least one or two areas, I'm sure, for every scholar where they don't agree with the scholarly consensus. I think most reputable scholars agree with the scholarly consensus on most things, but everybody has something that they just view a little differently than the majority of other scholars. And I just say that to caution those of us who use the phrase and engage in higher critical scholarship to make sure that we hold on to our viewpoints. We can be convicted in those viewpoints, but we have to be open to the realization that not only we could be wrong, but that there's always more than one way to look or think about something. And so we don't need to look down on people that we disagree with, while we can stand up for whatever our viewpoint is. So just a caution for us scholars out there in the way that we use language as we have these conversations, especially with people that we disagree with.